I thought my wife didn't love me anymore the day I found the cold cup of coffee sitting on the kitchen table. It had once been our little ritual. Every morning before I left for work, she would hand me a fresh cup and kiss my cheek. But for 3 months, the coffee had been growing colder. The kisses had disappeared, and the woman I loved looked at me as if I were a stranger passing through her house. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness and second chances can heal even the deepest wounds, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone you love, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. For more heart-touching stories that remind us what truly matters. My name is Rowan Mercer, and for 12 years my wife Celine had been the center of my world. We met at a bookstore on a rainy afternoon when we were both reaching for the same novel. She laughed first and said that fate had terrible timing. I knew then that I wanted to spend the rest of my life making her laugh. Our life together wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. We lived in a small yellow house at the edge of town, surrounded by rose bushes that Celine planted every spring. We had a son named Theo, who was 9 years old and had inherited his mother's smile. Every evening we ate dinner together, watched old movies, and talked about our dreams. Then something changed. At first it was so small that I hardly noticed it. Celine stopped humming while she cooked. She no longer reached for my hand when we walked together. She stayed awake long after midnight, sitting on the porch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. I asked her many times if something was wrong, but she always smiled weakly and said she was tired. Tired? That one word became a wall between us. I tried harder. I bought her flowers, planned weekend trips, and even took time off work. But every effort seemed to make her drift farther away. She thanked me politely, the way strangers thank each other. I started to believe I had done something terrible. Maybe I had become boring. Maybe I had worked too much. Maybe she had fallen out of love with me. The thought followed me everywhere. One afternoon, while cleaning the garage, I found a small wooden box hidden behind old paint cans. Inside was a stack of papers. My hands trembled as I looked through them. They were medical bills. The dates were recent. The amounts were enormous. I stared at the papers, unable to breathe. Why would my wife hide this from me? That night I watched her from across the dinner table. She looked exhausted. Her cheeks seemed thinner and there were dark circles under her eyes. Suddenly I realized I hadn't truly looked at her in weeks. I had been so busy worrying that she didn't love me that I had forgotten to notice that she was suffering. After everyone went to sleep, I quietly searched our home and found a small envelope hidden in her bedside drawer. Inside was a diagnosis: stage 3 lymphoma. The room began spinning. I sat on the floor with the papers in my hands and cried harder than I had cried in my entire life. My wife wasn't falling out of love with me. She was dying. The next morning I could barely look at her. She was making breakfast, moving slowly, carefully. She smiled when she saw me. It broke my heart. I realized she had been carrying this burden alone because she was trying to protect me. I couldn't understand why. That evening, after Theo had gone to bed, I sat beside her on the porch. The setting sun painted the sky orange and gold. I held the medical papers in my hands. The color drained from her face. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then tears filled her eyes. She confessed everything. 3 months earlier, she had gone to the doctor because she felt tired all the time. The diagnosis came suddenly. She had been terrified. Her own mother had died from cancer when Celine was young, and she couldn't bear the thought of putting me and Theo through the same pain. She believed that if she pushed me away slowly, it would hurt less when she was gone. She had convinced herself that making me think she no longer loved me would make my grief easier. I listened in complete silence. Then I took her hands and cried. I told her that there was no world in which losing her would hurt less because she acted distant. I told her that I loved every version of her, even the frightened one sitting beside me. For the first time in months, she leaned into my chest and sobbed. The next morning, we told Theo the truth. Our brave little boy listened carefully and then hugged his mother so tightly that she couldn't speak. He simply said that superheroes get sick too. Those words changed everything. We decided to fight together. The following weeks became a blur of hospital visits, treatments, and long drives. There were days when Celine could barely stand. There were nights when she cried because she was losing her hair. I shaved my head the same day she lost hers. Theo did too. The three of us stood in the bathroom looking at each other and laughed for the first time in months. People say love is found in grand gestures. I don't think that's true. Love is sitting beside someone at 3 in the morning while they sleep in a hospital bed. Love is learning how to tie a scarf around your wife's head because she no longer has hair. Love is pretending to enjoy terrible hospital coffee because it makes her smile. Months passed. There were good days and bad days. Sometimes I was terrified. Sometimes I hid in the car and cried. But every time I looked at Celine, I saw something incredible. She still found reasons to smile. She still worried about Theo's homework. She still reminded me to wear a jacket when it was cold. Even while fighting for her life, she was taking care of us. One afternoon, after a difficult treatment, we sat in the hospital garden. The flowers were blooming and the sunlight was warm. Celine looked at me and confessed that she had been wrong. She said she had never stopped loving me. She had only been afraid. Afraid of becoming a burden. Afraid of leaving us behind. Afraid of being remembered as the woman who brought pain into our lives. I held her hand and told her the truth. The pain came from imagining life without her. The treatments, the fear, the sleepless nights. None of those things changed how deeply we loved her. If anything, they reminded us how precious every ordinary moment really was. A year earlier, I had complained about folding laundry. Now I would have traded anything just to fold clothes beside my wife forever. As winter turned into spring, something miraculous happened. The treatments began to work. The doctors became more hopeful. The tumors had shrunk. The disease was retreating. I will never forget the day the doctor walked into the room smiling. The cancer was in remission. Celine burst into tears. I couldn't even stand. Theo jumped around the room as if he had just won a championship. We drove home with the windows open, letting the warm afternoon air rush through the car. For the first time in a long while, our future felt possible again. That evening, we sat on our porch watching the sunset. The same porch where I had once believed my wife no longer loved me. She leaned her head against my shoulder. The roses she had planted years ago were blooming again. And suddenly I understood something important. Love doesn't disappear during hard times. Sometimes it hides beneath fear, pain, and silence. Sometimes the people who love us most push us away because they think they're protecting us. Sometimes the cold coffee on the table isn't a sign that love is gone. Sometimes it's a cry for help. If this story is touching your heart right now, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Your support allows these stories of hope and second chances to reach more hearts around the world. Special request comment. Love is worth fighting for. If you believe that true love stays even in the darkest moments. A year later, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. I walked into the kitchen and found Celine smiling at me. In her hand was my favorite blue mug. The morning sunlight shone through the window, and for a moment I couldn't move. She handed me the coffee and kissed my cheek. A simple kiss, a simple cup of coffee, the very things I thought I had lost forever. I wrapped my arms around her and held her tightly. She laughed and asked why I looked so emotional. I didn't answer, because sometimes happiness is too big for words. I had spent months believing my wife didn't love me anymore. The truth was far different. She loved me so much that she tried to carry her suffering alone, and I loved her enough to stay and fight beside her. That day, as our son ran through the garden and my wife laughed beside me, I realized that the greatest gift in life isn't a perfect marriage or a life without pain. The greatest